Stress, burnout, apathy, the consequences of excessive workloads are real. Worse, no matter how hard you may try to keep up, there are just only so many hours in a day. Fortunately, there is something that you can do to stay on top of things, and it all begins with workload management.
Hey, and welcome to the official Teamly YouTube channel. If you enjoy our content, please click the like and subscribe button below. Now let's get straight to the video.
Most people believe that workload management is as simple as setting up a calendar and entering a due date for each task. However, it is so much more than that. Workload management is actually a strategic approach to planning your capacity, meaning that you estimate, track, and audit your resources and limitations consistently and consciously. To help you master that, we've got 7 workload management tips so you can get more done, ease your stress, and even enjoy better work-life balance. So let's jump right into the first one, which is to plan before you start. To manage your time effectively, you'll want to resist the temptation to rush in and get started on your next project. Instead, take time to make sure that any task you undertake is linked to a specific goal and fits into the larger picture. The reason for this is that because all too often, priorities and objectives can change. And if you rush into something without carefully evaluating how important it is or whether it's truly necessary, you run the risk of having to go back to square one later, ultimately creating more work for yourself further down the road. Our second tip is to tackle your hardest task first. When we're feeling overwhelmed, we tend to focus on the easy task so we can quickly check a lot of stuff off of our to-do list. The problem with this approach is that it hurts performance in the long run because our difficult tasks start to pile up. So rather than do that, try the eat the frog method, which was inspired by a Mark Twain quote. If it's your job to eat a frog, it's best to do it first thing in the morning. And if it's your job to eat 2 frogs, it's best to eat the biggest one first. In the case of productivity, your frog is your biggest, most important task. And if you have 2 frogs, you'll want to tackle the biggest, ugliest one first at the beginning of your workday. This method works so well because not all of the hours are created equal. By tackling your most dreaded task in the morning when your energy and your willpower are at their highest, you'll have the clarity and focus to complete them faster. Our next workload management tip is to delegate. After all, why spend time you don't have on tasks that someone else can just as easily accomplish? So rather than spreading yourself too thin, consider delegating administrative work or any task that someone else can quickly learn and complete. Just remember that when you're delegating tasks, you'll want to do it fairly. People should understand that delegation doesn't mean that you don't want to pull your own weight. Instead, you'll want them to recognize that because of their unique strengths, they're capable of doing the work more efficiently than you can right at the moment. Our fourth workload management tip is to block off time for emails and phone calls because let's face it, technology has us in its grip. So much so that we don't even notice that the emails and notifications force us to frequently switch between tasks, causing the brain downtime and loss of productivity. Although multitasking has become something people brag they're good about, research provides clear evidence that that isn't the case. Not only does the multitasking trigger anxiety, but it also reduces productivity by as much as 40%. So allocate set times to respond to emails and phone calls, and don't forget to silence your social media notifications. By removing the traffic jam in your head, you'll find it easier to get more done. Our next tip is to learn to be imperfect. If you're a perfectionist, we get that this one's a tough one. However, it's worth the effort to know when to say enough is enough, because perfectionism comes at a cost, and one of its main costs is lower productivity. Because perfectionists are aiming for unattainable standards, they're continually finding ways to tweak things that they're working on to continually make them perfect. And as you can imagine, this slows down work significantly. If what we've just described sounds all too familiar, we suggest aiming for excellence rather than perfectionism. A mindset of excellence will allow you to maintain your high standards while providing you with an effective strategy for getting work done faster. Our sixth workload management tip is don't be a people pleaser. If you're someone who says yes too often, it's probably because you don't want to let anyone down. However, trying to be all things to all people is a problem when you're already feeling under the gun. So rather than instinctively responding with a yes when someone asks you to do something, practice saying, "I'll think about it and get back to you." This simple saying will keep you from being caught off guard and agreeing to something that you just don't have the time for. Even better, once you get into the habit of saying it, you'll come to love this phrase because it's going to give you the time you need to evaluate whether or not you actually want to do something. All right, our final workload management tip is to set realistic expectations and plan for buffers, meaning that rather than scheduling yourself to the hilt, realize that it's not realistic to pack 100% of your schedule. Instead, you'll want to leave time for a buffer of at least 10%. After all, if there's one thing you can expect in life as well as the office, it's the unexpected. A time buffer helps because despite your best plans, you might be called into an ad hoc meeting, have to deal with unforeseen events or circumstances, or put out those proverbial fires. So keep your expectations realistic and give yourself time buffers so you're prepared for anything while still being able to manage your workload. All right, this concludes our tips on workload management. It's well worth incorporating them into your life to experience those improvements we talked about earlier, like less stress, more productivity, and greater work-life balance. Thanks for watching, and if you want more tips on workload management and business advice, visit our blog at teamly.com.